Our society today tends to accept without question the notion that there are only two ways to structure an economy: capitalism and socialism. Some people would say that these two systems are mutually exclusive and we have to choose one or the other. Others would argue that we can mix them, and the key is to find the right balance. But I think most everyone would agree that capitalism and socialism are on opposite ends of a spectrum. So as we move toward one, we move away from the other, and vice versa. The problem is that this paradigm is completely false. By selecting a position along this spectrum, we think we've made the critical choice, when in fact we're just following the well-beaten path, while ignoring a third option, a road less traveled. In order to really understand this third option, we have to break free from traditional thinking. Our natural tendency as human beings is to evaluate new ideas within the context of existing paradigms. But new ideas require new patterns of thought. We can begin by re-examining traditional assumptions. Capitalism and socialism are based on two major philosophies or ways of thinking that dominate our society. The first way of thinking has root in classical liberalism and the Enlightenment. This philosophy treats economics as a science. It holds the view that there are natural laws that govern the economy and create equilibriums, and that optimal results occur when markets operate without interference. The outward objective of this philosophy is liberty, but at its core is the principle of karma, or the law of the harvest. This is the idea that rewards should be proportional to efforts, or lack thereof. An example is the American dream. It's the idea that everyone has the chance to achieve something through hard work and perseverance. It sounds great, but there is an unspoken corollary to this, which is, if you have money and a nice house, then you must have worked hard and earned it, and if you don't have those things, then you must be lazy. Because karma reacts to each person differently according to his or her actions, this paradigm tends to be individualistic, action and outcome oriented, and logical. The problem with this worldview is that it's a rationalization, an excuse to dominate, oppress, and exploit the labor of others. We can trace this back to Malthus and Darwin, who said that because the population is growing faster than vital resources, there is a constant competition and struggle for survival. One might say, therefore, that the wretched condition of the poor is simply a natural state, nothing that the rich need to be concerned about. This thinking also points to the division of labor as a justification for inequality, claiming that it's natural for some people to sit at the top of the food chain in an ownership or managerial role because that's what they're suited for, whereas other people are suited for a subservient role doing manual labor or grunt work. The second way of thinking has root in the ideas of Karl Marx and other progressive thinkers. This philosophy sees the political and economic system as a natural progression over time, patterned after Hegel's dialectic. It's all about change. Change might be regarded as evolutionary adaptation, but often it's brought about through revolution, an ongoing process of questioning authority, disrupting the current social system, taking power from those who oppress, and restructuring society to be more egalitarian. The outward objective of this philosophy is equality, but at its heart, it's about acceptance and love of all humanity, despite our flaws. As such, it tends to focus on the collective good rather than the individual. It recognizes that every human being has unconditional claim on natural rights. The problem with this worldview is that it's dependent on the use of power, typically government authority, to enforce its objectives, thus taking away the free will of individuals. This creates a contradiction. It values equality, but requires a form of dominance and oppression in order to achieve that equality. As one form of oppression replaces another, the effort to restore balance must be constant and ongoing. These two ways of thinking tend to operate in our society today as self-existent dogmas that don't question their own principles. They may appear to be opposites, but they are actually similar in at least three ways. First, they are both materialistic, meaning they are both focused only on satisfying material needs as opposed to non-material values. This might seem obvious, yet many people today would say that simply having more material goods doesn't necessarily make us happier. Second, both philosophies fail to place moral responsibility on the individual. While conservatives take firm moral positions on social issues, the economy is considered to be basically amoral, and as long as basic ethical standards are met, nothing anyone does is wrong, and individuals have no responsibility for others. For progressives, the moral imperative is to achieve greater equality and overcome oppression. but these objectives tend to be pursued at a systemic level rather than through individuals making right or wrong choices. And finally, both sides tend to see economic outcomes as being a function of government involvement. Progressives want more, conservatives want less. This leads people to turn to politics to achieve the solutions that they want because they don't think they themselves are capable of achieving any kind of change. The overall effect of the traditional dichotomy is that we see economics as something external to ourselves, something we have to adapt to and respond to, rather than something we create through our own actions. It also pits us against each other. We can see that the core values of both sides are, in many ways, opposites, but we can't really say that one is better than the other. They're both good. The problem happens when we separate them and see the two as being mutually exclusive. As we externalize and operationalize this separation as a society, the systems that emerge are incompatible with each other. And simply mixing capitalism and socialism doesn't reconcile the two values. We can think of this in terms of male and female. Simply mixing the two creates something androgynous. The mixture is what we have today, and it's not working. A better analogy would be to imagine capitalism and socialism having a baby. Through the union of two opposites, something new and different is born. There is a third way, an alternative to capitalism and socialism. Though this option tends to be overlooked, it has a strong foundation and a long history. But this new system can only come into being as we set aside traditional paradigms, relax our knee-jerk response, and begin to adopt a new way of thinking.